Opuntia. If you were out on the plant walk with us, we looked at these. This is a supposedly spineless from my backyard, but I'm looking at it, and remember, so this is the Cactaceae family. These are called areoles, these little spots. Areoles are where the spines come out of, the glochids come out of, the new leaves come out of, and the flowers come out of. So, it says spineless, but spineless is very relative. It means there's not a lot of spines, but when you look, if you look really close, there are plenty of spines. And remember, glochids are microscopic, so they are, that's why I'm wearing gloves. These gloves are not going to stop glochids from going in my fingers, but at least there'll be some type of barrier. So I learned so much about this from Sam Kaufman, because he does a wilderness first aid class. I bring him in, it's a 2-year certification, and I bring him in every 2 years to do this wilderness first aid class. He just was in here, he was just here in August, we did it. And so, first of all, he uses this for everything that you can use aloe for, because aloe is not a native plant, and he lives in Texas, and prickly pear or Opuntia is everywhere. Whereas aloe, aloe is native to Africa. While yes, aloe can grow here. I grew it. There's aloe. We'll talk about that next. This is a native plant, and it is everywhere. And it is really easy to pick a leaf. You literally just grab it, and if it has spines, use tongs or good and hardy gloves. And you just break it. And remember, Opuntia, the name actually means jointed cactus. So when you take a pad, these are called pads or modified stems, you take a pad and you bend it and it will break at the joint, which is really awesome. And so then that joint will just scab over and the plant will grow a new one. So, so this is really functional. Some people around here actually make fences out of them. So Sam taught us that generally you want a thicker one, but if you were lost, say, in the desert, and you found, or you're just lost or whatever, and there's prickly pear, and then you find some access to some water, but that water could have giardia or something in it, you need to be able to boil the water. Well, maybe you have a little flint and you can light a fire, but you've got nothing, you just have a plastic bottle. You can't boil water in a plastic bottle. You can actually boil water in a prickly pear pad. You can literally take this, and generally you want a little thicker one so you can open it up more, but you can literally wedge this into a fire, put a rock on either side, pour water in it, and it will be a vessel that you can actually boil water. That water will then get infused with the mucilage and will help to hydrate you even more than just drinking water alone. So I thought that was one of the coolest things. I'm not exactly a prepper, but I definitely like the idea of sustainability and resiliency, of being able to know. I think one of the worst parts of the capital and consumer culture is that it disempowers people to think that you can't make things, you have to buy everything, which is like preposterous, and it wastes a ton of money. And so to know that there are all these resilient ways. So if you don't need to boil water, you take a prickly pear pad, but let's say you have a sunburn. Sam Kaufman uses this for everything that you would use aloe for, because they have it growing all over their property. Remember, this is also food. Nopales, they are delicious. They are very commonly found in Mexican cuisine. Nopales, they are the young pad. So this one is a little bit older. No, but this is just a little bit past nopales state, because you want it to be younger when it's not quite as fibrous. So I'm cutting this down the side, or right down the middle actually. I'm using a ridiculously dull knife, which is not very helpful. So this one is pretty dehydrated. It doesn't look very gooey or slimy, but check it out. Can you see the one of the coolest things? Oh, I haven't even mentioned this yet. There's this thing called the doctrine of signatures. And the doctrine of signatures, while not every scientist agrees with this, the doctrine of signatures is an idea, a concept that states that what something looks like or where it grows suggests what it's used for. So everyone has heard of these, whether you realize it or not. Like carrots. Carrots are good for the eyes, and when you cut a carrot, you know, in half, it looks like it's an eye. And carrots are rich in beta-carotene that is really good for eye health. Walnuts are really good for the brain. Well, if you crack a walnut shell and you look at a walnut, it looks like a brain. And it's rich in omega-3s, fatty acids, good quality fats are good for your brain. Celery is a doctrine of signature for bones because they're so mineral rich, and we use minerals to help build bones. So the doctrine of signatures is that concept. Well, slimy things are really good for your skin, and I find it fascinating that when you open this up, and I love, these are grapefruit spoons. They have these little teeth at the end. I love these because they're great for scraping. And the more hydrated, the better this is going to be. But even when it's not hydrated, I'm still getting all this stuff. Let's see how we're gonna do this. I'm gonna scrape, or if somebody would like to come up and scrape, I just want everybody to get to feel some of this goo, because even in its dehydrated state, it still has a slimy consistency. And if you just mix this with a little bit of water, it would immediately gel up. But even not mixing it, this would be a lovely thing to put over a sunburn. Of course, if you get spines or glochids in your skin while trying to prepare something for a sunburn, that is not going to help you very much. So I think it's really awesome that this actually shows, it looks very similar to the epithelial cells that make up your skin. And you use this on your skin. So this is a doctrine of signature plant. Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. I see nobody jumping up at the opportunity to help. So that means on the feedback forms, there should be no complaints of, we didn't get to do anything.
Nobody wants to be in the video.
I only say that because I've had that come back. We didn't get to do anything. It's like, did you ever come up when I said we need volunteers? No. Okay. Oh, good. Come on up.
Does it stay very long, or does it keep like that?
No, because it's not preserved. This would, if you keep it, put it in the fridge, you just scrape away.
Am I volunteering to scrape?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what we need help with right now. Because I just want to be able to pass this around so people can feel some of it. And while you do that, I can actually continue talking. So be careful, but I just want you to take a little bit and just feel how it feels on your skin. I'll just take it. I'll go back there. Thanks. Awesome. Thank you so much. So Opuntia, prickly pear, this is the Cactaceae family. So like this right here, this is called spineless, this picture. But every one of these areoles are filled with hundreds of glochids. So when it says spineless, it's literally just saying it doesn't have the big long spines, but it still has plenty. This plant is very dangerous. If you fell on this plant, you would be covered in teeny tiny microscopic, it's really bad. Everything about this plant is mucilaginous. You can take the petals, pick a petal, be very careful. Sometimes glochids are on the base of the petals. Pick a petal, put it on your tongue, it just dissolves into slime. It's just lovely. Especially when you have like a dry throat and you're hiking in the desert and it's hot and you can take something and feel that cooling effect immediately. It's really awesome. So you can use the flowers, petals, you can use the inside of the pads, you can use the, and then of course there's the pears, which are the fruit. Those also are very antioxidant rich, but also have some mucilage in them. Predominantly, so you can use it both topically as an anti-inflammatory, as well, you can use this as an emollient or as a, that's probably good. See how it looks like that. So now here's, did you want to grab a little for yourself? Just a little, it's just to rub on your skin, just to feel the effect of the, like I just take like a little bit and just to feel the effects, to feel that cooling, soothingness. You know, if you're really into it, you could like rub it on your face and be a green monster. This would be a really good. Was it you, Christy, that did the like haunted house for your teenager, and you put Opuntia pads as like?
Oh no, that was not me.
Oh.
Sounds like something I would do, but it was
I could
not
have
me.
swore that was somebody had done like a haunted house or whatever, and then they had to eat worms, and the worms were, they took a prickly pear pad and they skinned it, and then they cut it into strips like a worm, and then they dropped them in water, and so then the teenagers were blindfolded, and they had to pull a worm out of the water and eat the worm, and then they had to eat an eyeball, which was like peeled grapes floating in water. I just think stuff like that's awesome. I loved Nickelodeon when I was a kid, all that green slime and stuff. You can make your own natural green
I've done
slime.
a survivor eating challenge with Nepalese before, but
Cool. So, some of the other things that we can talk about, of course, the pads are mucilage, the spines. The pads Nopales are blood sugar balancing. So when you eat them as food, this is one of the coolest things, when you make food as medicine, and you can eat that food is having a balancing effect. And so then, literally eating Nopales is really good for people that deal with extreme blood sugar ups and downs, blood sugar spikes and crashes. It's going to help to regulate your blood sugar, which then will help with snacking, especially if you tend to snack on sugary things. Keep in mind, this isn't just your Snickers bar. This is healthy smoothies are often chock full of sugar. And people that like to just munch on crackers, well, you're munching on simple carbohydrates that break down into sugar. So recognizing all these different forms, that extra, I just had to come to terms with, I was on vacation and I found these, not your father's root beer.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, and they're like alcoholic root beer, and so I was drinking it. So I was on vacation, I'm camping, and I'm drinking it, and then I go to have a second one, and I look at the sugar. I'm like, I don't drink soda. If I'm gonna drink soda, I take 5% of juice and add it to bubbly water and put it in a squeeze of lime, and there's my soda. I don't want to drink something that has 26 grams of sugar, but in drinking these not your father's whatever, these alcoholic, they're basically sodas. I was like, oh, I just used alcohol as a reason to allow myself to drink soda when I haven't drank soda in years. It's like, oh, okay. You have to it's really important to learn about marketing, because it's amazing what we will do. So this is also a fantastic topical internal anti-inflammatory. Truly fantastic for things like ulcers or heartburn, or you could make a tea out of just the goo, and if you don't like the goo, you can make a tea and then strain it out and drink that. You can make a tea out of the goo, or better yet, make a slurry, like put it into a food processor with some water and make a slurry, and then put that in your ice cube trays. So many different ways. I've used prickly pears themselves, the actual pears, in with making ginger syrup. So it was like a ginger hibiscus prickly pear syrup. It was a cooling and heating syrup. It was wonderful. I cannot say enough good things about Opuntia. I love, love, love them. There's so much you can do with them. Oh yeah, topical anti-inflammatory. I had, last big story. I was in herb school this one time in herb school. I had moved in, it was in Arizona, I had moved into this straw bale house that the owner had passed away a year before, and so their son was managing the property, and so the owners of the school asked the son if they would open up the house to us. So we're renting this house, but it hasn't been lived in a year, and so the son came in and they cleaned it up. Great. So we're there for, it was less than a week, and I'm there with people that these are people I'm going to live with for the next 6 months. I've never met them. So, it's like, okay, let's get to know each other. And we're sitting there, and it's a straw bale house, and it has very low lighting. And so we're chatting, and I remember going into the kitchen and noticing mouse turds. And I was like, ooh, okay, this is bad. Because there's a thing called hantavirus that you have to be really careful. It's very deadly. It travels in mice. And so I was like, oh, okay, need to be aware of that. Well, then this girl that I'm living with is telling this story. We start looking around, and, she's telling the story, and this mouse comes running across the living room. And she freaks out and does what a lot of people do, and she immediately tries to jump on her chair But she, like, if this is her chair, she goes to jump on it, and she just does this, and it's just a wooden chair, and it flips around, and it smacks her in the shin, and she gets this huge hematoma, like this big bruise, like black. And so then that's hurting her, but then we're looking at the mice, and then we start taking notice, and we look around. Straw bale. This is bales of straw that are covered in like mud and then used to build onto it. Mice love to live in straw. Did you know this? Because we start looking around and we realize that the mice are aligning the ceiling and they're staring at us. It's like literally like, these things have been living here. We just moved into their house. Oh dear. And then the funniest part about it is that she insisted on having the master bedroom. Well, the master bedroom had a burlap ceiling with all these stains on it. Turns out the stains are mouse pee. And I got regulated to the crappy little room in the back that had a solid ceiling. Which means that I had the good bedroom until we moved out, because I'm not going to live with mice like that. So what does all this have to do with Opuntia? We go to class the next day, and there is a prickly pear in the back, and she has this giant hematoma, like big bruise. And so they took this, they sliced it, and then they scored it, and they put it covering the bruise, and they wrapped it around, and they would change it. They changed it, I think, 2 or 3 times throughout the day. Literally, it would start really cool. And within an hour, she said it literally felt like it was sucking the inflammation out. And so each time that we would change it, it was hot. Like it really was sucking the inflammation out. The pad was literally hot. It started out being really cool, and then it turned hot because remember, inflammation, pain, redness, heat, and swelling. And so we could literally watch, by the end of the day, that black bruise was yellow along the edges and starting to get purple, because it literally had this incredible anti-inflammatory effect by having it be a physical poultice. I also, Sam told a story recently that there was he was out at this hot spring called Eden Hot Spring. If you ever get the chance to go. It's amazing. It's in southeast Arizona or southwest New Mexico. It's right around the border. Eden Hot Spring. And they were there for a class, and there was a dog on the property, and the dog had just gotten bit by a rattlesnake in the face. And so they treated it with echinacea, which is, once we get to echinacea in the immune, we'll talk all about why you would do that. But they did a combination. They did echinacea, and then they did packs of Opuntia pads. And the Opuntia, this is a matrix that sucks things into it. And so they literally use a combination of echinacea that actually helps to break down the enzyme that causes a lot of the swelling. And then they were packing this, which was helping also to extract. And that dog, within the matter of an hour, some of the swelling had started to subside. It was still swollen, but the dog wasn't whimpering in pain. And by the next day, the dog was actually running around. There's still some swelling, but the dog was actually kind of running around and like acting like a dog and actually eating. So there are some pretty phenomenal things that can happen from using Opuntia, both the demulcent, but also just having a lot of that real nice topical anti-inflammatory. Has anybody here used Opuntia for anything? Or eaten nopales?
Yeah.
How do you like to eat them?
Burrito.
Yes, I love them in burritos. They blend, the sliminess blends really well with like black beans, or beans in general. I've had them where they're grilled and then just put on like a fajita plate. Oh my goodness, so good. I love food.
I've had them shredded up and like cooked in a pan. And it was really interesting because it has that demulcent slimy effect, but it was crunchy.
Ah, that would be interesting. So I have a student who is a diabetic, and he controls it by using prickly pear capsules, which there's more study on the actual eating of nopales than there are on the capsules, but he finds that he can control his blood sugar spikes with eating good protein in the morning and taking Opuntia capsules. Other people find that they can literally just, you can juice it and put it in with other juices. You can juice it and freeze it, so you can add that juice to other things, or you can just What I will say is, if you want to eat nopales, you can either buy them already canned, which I'm not a big fan of. I like to get them fresh, and oftentimes you can find like Mexican mamas that actually like will skin it all and dice it up, which makes it much easier because you don't have to deal with the glochids. One thing I will say, that I often get them in a pound bag of already sliced and diced, and that is great, except I'm not going to use it that fast, and so I threw the whole thing in the freezer, which then means I need an ice pick to get any out. So now when I get that, I take like a small handful, and once again, I love ice cube trays, so I just put like basically a serving per ice cube, and then I freeze it that way, and then once they're frozen, then I can take them all and throw it into a bag together, and now I can just grab little bits instead of having to like ice pick out. They are so easy to work with. I throw them in with eggs, I throw them in with beans, I just throw them in with all different things, and they're easy to work with, they're incredibly nutritious, and they're wonderful for helping your blood sugar.
Do these ones also bloom? I just got a cactus that blooms in the summertime, and they said that's when our food plants would be probably
So
most active.
Opuntias, there's a lot of different ones, and we as humans have definitely crossbred and hybridized them. So there's different Opuntias that will bloom actually throughout the year, depending on, because there's some that you're still harvesting the fruits of, but I know most of the ones in the desert bloom in February, March, and April. But I'm sure that there are some that bloom in summer. Yeah. Cool. Let's take a little break.